meeting of the Charter Revision Commission to order. Roll call, please.
Lori Anderson.
Yes.
Kate Boulay.
Yes.
Tom Pomona.
Here.
Marilyn Corsati. Here. Justin Elliman.
Here.
George Shaw.
Here.
Greg Stokes.
Here.
And Richard Stoiny.
Here. All right, minutes from April 6th, 2026. I have a motion to approve the minutes.
There are some errors in these minutes that were not corrected.
Okay.
The minutes are stating that I was not present at the meeting, and I was.
I should have sent in edited, oh, sorry.
And
From last
April
week.
6th minutes, not,
You said the April 6th, not the 14th.
Because I was gonna say, I updated the ones from last
Oh.
week, which was a bit of a copy and paste from
Yes,
you were
yes,
at
apologize.
yes, my mistake, I apologize. Yes, okay, I was not there. I was out of state making one.
Also, totally my mistake on last week, so updated them. Thank you.
Okay.
I keep forgetting we're a week behind.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
No problem.
all right, do I have a motion to approve the April 6th minutes?
Motion to approve?
Second?
Second.
Any comments or corrections needed for this one?
The only thing is my name's spelled wrong.
What are you, Marilyn?
Need another N on there. I am, two N's.
Sometimes it's.
I'm a Maryland with two N's. My sister was a Rob with two N's.
Well, we just voted here last week to change it, so.
Yeah.
So like, that's,
It saves on printing costs.
Saves on printing if we can change your name and not write a letter.
Any other changes? Okay, show of hands to approve the minutes. Okay, thank you. Unfinished business, chapter 3, section 1, table. Before we get to that one, do we have any other input from staff or attorney? on the
We
other-
do, we
Okay.
had input on the C, referendum on capital expenditures. That is in your red line.
Yeah.
The district version is in there.
That's under section,
It's chapter 4, section 9. I'm sorry, chapter 6, section 9.
I was gonna say.
It's on page 19.
19.
So this is the town attorney suggested, language? So they found that it is able to exclude like federal money, okay, cool.
Well, only if this group says that's what it wants to do,
Right.
and council agrees and the voters agree.
Yeah,
Correct,
but
yes.
we know legally that is, okay. That's very interesting.
Any questions or comments on the verbiage?
Okay, my question is, we were talking last time too about like percentages, like say if the town put in 60 and the state put in 40, that would affect how it goes to vote. Did this clear up that, or does it, that's still a
Yeah,
little?
this is just a straight pass-through, right?
Yeah.
So there's no town obligation.
The first part, first half of it takes into account any net expenditure by the town. Has to hit that.
So if it's still any town funding, it will still have to go to a vote.
No,
No, up to that.
no. So, yeah, so.
Okay,
under
I
your
guess.
scenario, the state project that requires a match, as long as the town's match is below that 0.0002,
Okay.
it wouldn't require a vote. But if, again, let's say the town's match is $1 million, it has to go to a vote because it
Got it.
exceeds the 0.0002.
Got it, thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion to approve as amended by the town attorney?
Make a motion.
Second. Tom? Okay. All those in favor? Hands. Thank you very much. Section 11, nothing on section 11 yet.
That that was, I believe you all tabled that. Are you talking about contribution?
Yes.
I think that you all tabled that. You were going to read the safe harbors letter and get a better understanding of what that
Yep.
letter.
Let's stay on that section 11 for now. So the safe harbor letter brought up concerns, albeit they were concerns raised by a non-resident and a what's the other term?
Non-taxpayer.
Non-taxpayer, essentially.
Oh, no, is there?
That's on page 20, by the way,
Yeah, 20 on the one that handed out from tonight.
Yeah.
on tonight's handout.
I get my only thing is
Looking on your other.
let me check it again. The only thing they point out, there may be some legal concerns. I didn't know if we were worried about that. Let me see if I can actually mark it. This part here, many nonprofits have their own conflict interest policy that can prohibit accepting a government or other board member, making the town requirement impossible to fulfill. With my only concern, there might be legal issues in there.
Which section was that? Oh, I know that.
That's on the second page.
Yep.
Yeah. This is a Connecticut Code of Ethics for public officials, provided no public official may have any financial interest or engage in any activity that is in substantial conflict with the proper discharge of their duties.
So I guess the question here is, does this group want to take this into account?
I guess my only concern is there currently potentially legal issues with how it is currently worded? Could it open up the town to problems down the line?
I'm trying to understand what kind of problems it would open the town up to.
Because if the board member, they have one vote, assuming they were, we maintained it as a voting board member. Another option is we could say that the town representative doesn't have a vote, it's a non-voting liaison, right? Again, it also goes back to, are there concerns with this from this group?
So my only concern is on our legal end. I have no issue with like board members, town council members being on different boards. I just want to make sure it doesn't cause us any legal problems as like some of the laws they've listed here.
So typically on a board, no one individual board member makes unilateral decisions.
Yeah.
Right? So from that perspective, in my experience, from that perspective, it's one voice out of however many they have on the board. They could be influential. And I guess you can argue that because they're part of the town council, they have a different level of influence than anyone else might. But again, it's one voice on the management board, and the way to work around it, again, if it's a concern, is we can just say it's a liaison, non-voting board member. So that the town's voice is reflected, but not in a way that would modify any. A town council person can influence anybody at any time if they want to.
Town council members are members of boards today. They may not give money, the town may not give money. One that first came to mind, I'm thinking, well, I think we do provide services to them, so that doesn't count.
We got 4th of July.
That wasn't the one I was thinking, surprisingly. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
4th of July, I mean, because I served on the 4th committee when I was on the council, so.
Yeah, I mean, really, it
Because
comes.
you're a board of director, you're, on the board there.
It comes down to, I don't think that there's any legal issue for the town in this. The potential issue would be that now that council member is on that board and there is, money exchanging, that council member shouldn't make be a part of the vote for that particular funding because they're on the board.
But that's on the council side.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, is
Yeah.
there's that, but outside of that, I can't foresee any legal issues that the town would have with this, and, you know, to me, it's a matter of, you know, do you want someone from the council represented on a board that we are giving a certain amount of money to? Again, not really do anything other than be a voice for the town and report back to the council, basically, of what's going on. So you can say, well, you know, they said that they were gonna use that $20,000 to do X, but they're really doing B. You know, it's like totally the opposite of what they said, and we shouldn't give it to them anymore, right? I mean, that's in the end, the real value to what's going on.
The only thing I mentioned, just to separate the two, there are council members that serve on boards or have served on boards that were not assigned by the council. They were on that board maybe before they even got. So then, I think we have to narrow it in to being, you know, council-appointed board for the very reason this states here, that there's a financial investment from the town. So you know, to separate those two, that way we're not discouraging council members from being active in the organizations they want to be. And they're not officially representing the town as a board member, so we got to separate that. So that's the first step in my mind. So I think we have to make sure the wording in this is talking about, you know, it says here, town, you know, unless a town is represented on its board by one or more members nominated thereby by the council, that's an official appointment by the council. But if somebody's on a board just out of their own selectness, involved in the food shelf, soup kitchen, you know, opera house, you know, all the different places, you know, in our town, you can volunteer. So that would be the case. Personally, in my mind, I always had a little bit of a problem, because I know when I was, you know, obviously on the council, I was assigned different liaisons and boards and stuff. I personally, you know, I would try to back off. I would like it more a liaison than being a board member. Only it separates it from being an official thing where they have input. They're there to represent the council's interest in the money and report back. Being a liaison satisfies, you know, that category without having to be on the board. So that's a thought there. I mean, and I also don't know how many council members actually attend board meetings of the ones they're involved in. I mean, you know, some do and some don't. And if you know anything about council, is that when you're on the council or board of ed, you're given, you know, a bunch of liaisons and stuff. You're on maybe 20 different things, and, you know, you have to prioritize what you can go to, you know, your family obligations and stuff. So I've always been more in favor of a liaison approach than a board member. That separates the two, and it still gets the job done. The liaison is reporting back to the council, you know, so I'll leave it there.
If I could,
Yeah.
Sheila and I had this conversation earlier. And primarily, does this even need to be in the charter? Because let's say this isn't in the charter, but council wants to do that. They just have to pass a resolution. They can say, you know, or an ordinance if they want to put it in the code book. So they could make this up. So if you all decided that, well, we don't think this is right, we don't want it, so we're taking it out. Well, the council could say, we agree it shouldn't be in the charter, but we want to have control of it, so we're going to pass an ordinance that says something similar to that, or something different than that, and it could be based upon, you know, higher numbers, lower numbers, or whatever. So, you know, in and of itself, putting this in here may not be as important as what maybe back then they wanted. I mean, I'm guessing when this was put in, there was a very specific issue.
Yeah.
I don't think it belongs in the charter at all. Again, this sort of goes back to, we elect people every 2 years who make decisions about where to spend our money. If they're doing it inappropriately, we should elect new people. If we don't, that's maybe our fault. Like, I think that, like, that's straightforward enough for me. And, you know, I do hope that we end up in a place where we're supporting more community-based organizations with more dollars, right? And if we get there, to our colleague's point, like, that's a lot of time and a lot of work, even if we're gonna assign a liaison to every single one. Not saying that that work isn't worth doing, right? But sometimes there are just natural conflicts. And so if we wanna give that responsibility to one of 11 people, like, that's at some point, hopefully gonna be a lot to do. I would like to think that any of these fine organizations would welcome the council or members of the town, as I believe they have, if ever anyone would like to be there. I've never heard really a massive complaint about that, so I would just go ahead and trust those folks we elect every 2 years.
How many organizations fall into this bucket? Handful?
Yeah,
I think it
there's-
was 5 to 7.
Many right
So
now.
it's not a huge number.
No.
No.
I think there was about 113,000 that was given out last year, so that's 7 or 8.
And that's a separate budget line in the budget anyways. So
Right.
from the residents' perspective, it's controlled through the budget. Regardless of the amount and representation, the budget controls how much the town's willing to
And their applications are submitted to a subcommittee.
reviewed by the council. And then the resolution, let's say the food shelf as an example, resolution could read that we're willing to give this, but we need a liaison with the organization.
But we discussed, they also have reporting requirements already, right?
Yes.
So like,
No, absolutely. I just want to make sure that what
Yeah.
we're taking out today is covered.
yeah, and I think the reporting requirements help cover some of that too.
Yeah, it does. I mean, obviously, you can look up, any of the nonprofits that are 501c3, and you can get the update, I mean, on what's happening there. And that's been done, and sometimes it didn't turn out too good with,
Life happens.
some development programs and stuff, so.
And I think, just from a practical standpoint, there are those organizations that it would be very difficult to carve out a seat for the town.
A formal board seat.
I mean, think of maybe an organization that spans multiple towns. They don't have that, calls from, any other town that requires that, but here, the town of Enfield, we get a seat.
Right.
That, again, could be, from their perspective, okay, I get $10,000 from Enfield, but now I have South Windsor, and everyone else that mad at me, and so I'm gonna lose $50,000. So it becomes a balance, but.
But that'll exist anyways.
Yeah.
In terms of yeah. Tom?
Yeah, the way I walked into the meeting tonight is, what I have in front of me is what they recommended be added to the charter. That's what I'm looking at here. And I'm listening to the conversation. My 2 comments are these. First, I did agree, I thought they brought up an excellent point that today, if we give somebody $5,000, a council member has to be a board member. And then if we want to give them more money later on down the road, the council member has to recuse themselves. So that didn't make any sense to me. I think that's an excellent point. I like this idea of a liaison, because I still say, well, is $5,000 the right number? I don't know, maybe that's kind of low. But to say, if we're going to give you something substantive, we want to have some contact with you. And in terms of whether or not I thought it should be in the charter, in this instance, I lean toward yes. Because again, I think of the charter as a constitution. And it's saying, when we give big donations to somebody, we're gonna have something in the Constitution that says, here's what we're gonna do. So I get it, we might be doing it anyways, but I liked having it in the charter. And so I walked into here this morning, tonight, saying, I like what they recommended. And I was gonna vote yes to just add what they said, because it seems to get all of that. So that's my perspective, and I think that's a little bit of, we're a little bit
I
spread out.
wasn't too far off from where you were. I don't know that the 5 was the right number.
Yeah.
That could probably go up,
Yeah.
but I was leaning more towards just a liaison.
Yeah.
And it's up to that, just like our 2 liaisons for this commission, right? They're not able to join, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
I know they're watching because I get comments. And that's fine, that's what we want.
Their paragraph C, I thought did a good job of describing that.
I would say I'm also leaning to the idea of like a liaison.
So 3 things on the table. The first one is keep with modifications or not, or remove. Right. So before we do that, any other comments, thoughts?
I do just want to reiterate that I don't think that we need to have this in the charter to have town council folks who are responsible enough to show up at meetings of organizations, right? Like it feels like a little big brothery to me, right? Like, if anything, the liaison, I'm like actually totally against the having a formal board seat. I want to just say that out loud, like formally against that, but live with liaison. But I'd be more comfortable with something to say like, your board meeting should be open to town council members and town officials should they decide to come. I would like to live in a world where we're able to expand our philanthropy or support to more than 5 to 7 organizations, becomes kind of a big thing after a while. And attending those meetings is something that I would expect and hope, especially if we toss a stipend at them. I would hope my town council members would be going to those things already. Like, that's a reason I would vote for them. I don't know that that's something I would need to put in here.
The only pushback to what you said, though, is that in this saying that we as the town expect a liaison opportunity, whether or not they show, irrelevant. Right?
Sure.
But we expect that you welcome our liaison from the council whenever they decide to show up. Versus the town council in
Yeah,
general.
I wasn't taking it as regulating the town council.
Yeah, I would, well, not the council, I would, the community-based organization would be giving something too. Like, I just don't know that we need to get as formal as saying assign liaison. I would just say we would hope that we'd require that they welcome a member of town council to their board meetings.
Well, modification could be as represented
Like, that's all.
by a liaison, by one or more members of the town council, right? We can say that it's not, it's like you have to pick, right? You're the liaison, so
It
you,
must be
right?
Justin.
But a town council liaison, and if I can't go, I can ask you to go in my stead.
I like that.
Yeah,
Right, just a representative from the town council there as part or expected to be there from their perspective, not necessarily the town council persons. That's my,
yes, same page.
so is there anyone who feels strongly about removing that section completely then, with some of those comments? Okay. Motion to modify it so that it's not an assigned board member, but a liaison assigned to that, or a liaison from the council representing the council or at their board meetings.
I'll make them.
With it being, I guess, specified that it can be any member of the council.
That's determined by the council, right? The council.
Again, I would say it again, I think paragraph C gets at what we're saying.
Where in here,
It's in there,
I
but
should point out in paragraph C that it says a designated town staff liaison, that's not a council liaison.
Right.
That's
I
That's
didn't
a
pick up on that.
totally different thing.
Yeah, so we would cross out that word for sure. A designated town liaison shall maintain regular communication with the recipient of any contribution and report to the town council no less than annually, summarizing the status of all active contributions, outcomes achieved, and any material compliance issues.
I mean, we could just say the word staff to council, a designated town council liaison.
I don't know if we need council, I don't know, I just crossed off staff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know.
actually like that. I like just saying a town liaison.
Yeah.
Because then if we can designate either the staff.
I don't know that I'd put any parameters
Yeah.
on it, like, report back once a year. A liaison is simply liaison, it's just.
They'll do that during their normal.
Yeah.
Right,
Well,
I would
just
get
put
specific on
counties into
duties,
the-
I would just leave it as being a general statement, so.
Yeah, so I would make a motion to support saying in the charter that we would require a town liaison to organizations. I don't know.
Liaison from the town council.
Yes.
Well, can
Well-
is there something wrong the other things that they put in to clarify? Like they're clarifying what a contribution is.
Well, that's what I was gonna say next, like, do we have a thought of like, what amount? Like, I mean, $5,000
Well,
Well, do we have to define what a contribution is?
I don't, I mean,
I think we need
I
to
think
think,
they're saying they want to be careful that it's not, if they sign a contract to
Yeah.
do work or something like that, they don't want that to count as part of this. So they must be feeling like, yeah, I want to define what a contribution is. See how they talk
I
about,
think
like,
it's just a limit.
yeah, the
It's just
term
where it starts.
excludes contracts or other agreements for the procurement of goods or services. So I was making the assumption, I guess, that they must have run into that problem before. That the contribution means discretionary grants and charitable donations from the town. And so that sounds good to me.
Yeah, I would just leave it with our generic language, no such contribution of more than whatever number we choose, because I understand they're kind of writing it for us.
Yeah.
But, and I understand their language, I just think we want to keep it as broad as possible without just.
Because I think that the council would clarify that.
Yeah, and I think we need to leave it to them to clarify, because in a 10-year document, 5 years from now, they could run into a situation to where, you know, they're gonna want more generic than they're gonna want, you know, words, it will lock them into something that they may not be. We wanna give them enough leeway and leniency to be able to work around, you know.
Is there something the town calls it besides contribution?
We've been saying the vaguer the better for, you know.
Is it a charitable contribution?
Constitution
Is
should
it
be.
not a grant or anything like that, just contribution,
They
right?
don't even call it grants. That's the funny thing about it, is they don't call
Yeah.
it grants. Most places would call it a grant.
Yeah.
I guess I had another question. Do we want to specify, does it have to be a town council member, or could the town council say, ask you like, hey, they're this board, we want you.
No, I
Yeah,
should
it should be
just,
town
it
council.
should be a council member, because that, they're the fiduciary, with, you know, for the town, for the
Okay.
citizens.
So,
So we would keep in what's in the charter now, forget about the letter. We would keep the first line,
I was leaning at it.
and then the second line would change
Mm-hmm.
to say, if a contribution of more than $5,000 shall be made to any such organization, a designated town liaison shall maintain regular communication, blah, 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 blah. That's it.
In keeping with it generic, can I just
Yes,
read?
Please.
The town shall make no contribution to any organization or private corporation unless so authorized by the general statutes as revised. No such contribution of more than 5,000 or whatever you choose dollars shall be made to any such organization or corporation unless the town is represented by one or more liaisons nominated thereto by the council.
I like that.
I mean,
Motion to accept as read by Sheila.
Did we have a second? We didn't, we had Laura, but I know we do.
Thank you, Tom.
I know we do
yeah,
consensus is usually, but.
All right, before we vote on that, because we're gonna assume that for now, 5,000. Bump that up to a 10? I mean, what are the minimums?
There's some below 5,000.
How
I
many?
mean,
Small input, right?
Yeah.
How many below 10?
Not
anymore?
say the majority are 10 or below. I think there's only a few over 10,000. I mean, I can only think of 2 over 10,000 right now, but that doesn't mean there are more.
So,
But again, we're talking 113,000.
Right.
So
what makes it worth the council having a liaison for those organizations? Is it still 5? It's a liaison now, so it's a little different.
How many do we have between 5 and 10, Matt? You know, is that,
I am willing to look that up.
because
that's a great question.
'Cause I mean, if it's not a lot that's getting more than 5,000, I think it's fine to leave as is, unless we foresee ourselves rapidly expanding the amount we do and it becomes too much for the town council, but I mean, if it does, that's why we can only keep it.
and Matt, don't name who they are, that way, you know,
Yeah.
names are out here, we're not deciding on names.
Yep. I just have to pick the right budget that actually has that information. Because I don't know, This past year, you didn't do it.
Social services budget, right?
Yeah, but this year's budget didn't have, and
They added
of course,
it in
yeah,
after.
they have afterwards.
They added it back
So I
in.
have to find the budget. Because they didn't really change that much, because a lot of the same ones were here when I was here 10 years ago. So, in the same amounts, by the way.
Yeah, I'll be playing some music in the background, the TV audience.
Jeopardy.
Usually what really want to do. Yeah, get that one guy, this one guy, 27 weeks, 27 games. I mean, it's something beat. Just get, there's no excitement at the end of the game. Yeah. I like watching that.
Yeah.
Good, pretty good.
Well, Matt's looking at, a quick question if I can. I got a little mixed up on process again. When we're done, and we have our red line version, right, that goes to the council, is that right?
No. Once we approve our final red line,
Right.
yes.
It goes to the council. Right. Now, if the council disagrees with something,
We have a public hearing first, though, right?
Yeah, I was gonna talk about some of that at the
Okay.
end. We can't talk a lot because I didn't put it on the agenda, but
Oh.
we can have a little generic conversation.
okay. Maybe I'll leave it for later, because you know what my question was. My question is, if the council disagrees with something, what happens? Does it come back to us?
They can ask us to take another look at it, right?
The council can make suggestions to the commission on what they would like changed regarding what is in the draft report, not items that are not part of the draft report. So they can only comment on your proposed changes.
Yeah, okay. And then it comes back to us?
Then it comes back to you and you decide, yeah, they had some good ideas, or you know what, no, we liked what we originally.
And then, let's suppose,
And then you
then
submit
it goes
your
there,
plan. Mhm.
and then what?
And then the council votes on whether to send it to referendum or stop it or send it.
Yeah.
And if they vote not to send it to referendum, that they're just not going, they're gonna close the revision, the public has the ability to petition to fix it.
Thank you.
How would a petitioner work? So,
It's a whole process that is in the charter.
okay.
Certain percentage of registered voters have to
That's correct.
sign, they have to be
Signatures.
verified, they have to be brought to by a certain day to the clerk, or,
Yeah, the clerk.
Yeah.
Matt,
Five-ish.
five-ish one.
Yeah, 5 over 10,000 ranged anywhere, so this goes back a few years, anywhere from 11,000 to 26,000.
There's five of
Those
them.
5, yeah.
Okay.
What was the question, how many between 5 and 10?
Between 5 and 10, none in this year. There's one just below 5, then the rest are all over.
The
There
vast
is
majority
another.
below five then.
No. So one piece, there's an unallocated number in here, which means that there was more that went out, but they just didn't, during the budget process, allocate it. So it couldn't happen afterwards, so I don't have those. But here it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 that are spelled out in the budget. And of the 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are over 10,000.
And the other ones are under 5,000?
Yeah.
I don't know, 10,000 sound like a better number
Me
than.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so based on the rephrased section 11 that Sheila mentioned, changing the 5 to 10,000, is there a motion for that?
No, so,
Motion
I'll second.
So, Greg, motion. And you can talk about that.
We did it together.
Enjoy. Show of hands in favor of the modifications. Okay, thank you.
And that's for both to change liaison to member and move from 5 to 10.
Correct. That was for both,
Got it.
for all, the whole section. Department of Public Works, Chapter 5, Section 9. Back to this.
So when I was going back and forth, I just got a little bit of time to do a little bit of research. I think the language as it is, so this is just language about the board education and the building designs. I think as is fine.
Right, so the concern there was around the Board of Ed and if it still was
Yeah.
pertinent to this section. No concerns there then? There was one edit that needs to be addressed in there, the or, just show of hands to keep it as edited with the red line that's in there now. Section 9. All right. Chapter 3, Section 1, the council, the fun section. All right. Now, I will say that I had some feedback from both our liaisons that both are essentially not in favor of any stipend or other remuneration.
I'm sorry, I don't know. Is it okay to share who that is?
Oh, our liaisons are Marie Pisner and John Santinelli, right? Both have said that, representing both parties. That doesn't mean we have to listen to them. They're not voting members. Said respectfully, for those of you watching. But again, it's something, it's a data point that we should consider.
I have a question before we go into this. Do we know when we put this referendum forward, does it all have to be one question or can we split it?
That's going to be our recommendation to the council, whatever we decide. I think early on, we talked about the desire of splitting it into 2 or 3 sections, depending on the sensitivity of the particular section. Right, there's some stuff here that are just clean edits, need to be cleaned up, right? And I don't think the public would have an issue with that. Some of the other things, like the stipend.
Yeah, well, because my suggestion was gonna be going to this, because I think all the work we've done in here so far has been nice, simple, cleaning up the language, touching it up, and making sure things will function for, the next 10 years or until we choose to go over this again. So my suggestion would be going to this, what if we disregard the stipend off the bat as a separate question? So we're not worried about, it causing the good work we've done to fail.
Right.
That would be my suggestion off the bat in general.
All we can do, from my understanding, is make suggestions to the council as to how we recommend it be broken up, but they decide ultimately what that referendum looks like.
Yes.
I think we can also make those recommendations like at the end when we're done going through
Yep.
saying, hey, here's what I'd like to pull
Right.
out.
And I think that's what we'll do. I think we'll work through that for probably next week, jumping ahead a bit, but really looking at how do we want to break it up, any major issues with the red lines, because I think our red lines are done. But going back to the topic, and I know Matt pulled together the compensation list.
I also got some feedback this week unexpectedly. And it was very passionate to say not wanted. And I listened to every word. It was very passionate from the perspective of, I consider my work as a council member, my giving to the town. I want to volunteer. I think it's a big part of why people will want to be town council members. And the concept of, do I do it and will you get better people if you pay, I really don't think is an appropriate comment. That was the sense of the feedback, but it was a long call. And it was, like I said, it was very strong. And I guess I'm gonna share this, and it closed with, if Fiber decides to recommend one anyways, this person is gonna challenge it at the council. They're gonna say no. And so that means it will come flying back to us. So I just wanted to share that, I'm not saying that's my opinion, I haven't voted yet, but I just wanted to share that I got that phone call, and I didn't ask for it, it just happened.
And same with the feedback I got,
Yeah.
right? I didn't solicit it, they reached out,
Yeah.
complimented the work that this group was doing, but they didn't feel it was necessary.
Right.
And again, we have a former council person, we have the spouse of a current and past one, right? Is it safe to say we all agree that they shouldn't get a formal remuneration, pay,
That's a good question to ask.
right? I think
Because I
that,
heard from two people myself, and both sitting council members are against having this stuff.
I mean, I'll push back and say, right, like, we're talking about whether or not this could. I love all of our town council members, and I hope they know that, hello. But also, if our conversation is about understanding that, like, there are individuals who maybe don't, but maybe working a second job right now. If they're working a second job when normally they could be at a town council meeting and having a couple $1,000s as a stipend could get somebody who is a person who works a normal 9 to 5, raising a family, has to go work another job at night, if we could get them enough money to decide, you know what, maybe I am gonna run for the town council rather than do my other job. Those people are not on town council right now. And I appreciate we're hearing from town council members, but there are people that are already there. And if our goal is to bring more people into the conversation, then I think maybe we should continue considering this.
But there are council members working two jobs.
Yeah, I know that, I mean,
On the council.
I know, I mean, I've been on 2 committees here and worked 2 jobs in town too, I get it, I also have the joy of not having children. But so like, there's also that, I'm just saying that like, there may be conflicts for some people that by, you know, moving in the same direction as, you know, even some towns smaller than us have, that we could pay that respect to folks who have not considered running for town council for that reason.
And my point I was gonna make too is, well, I do like a lot of our town council. This is supposed to be, you know, our long-term document. 10 years ago, a lot of people who are on it now weren't there, and 10 years from now, who knows what it'll look like. And while I think we should take their comments into view, they're also not, you know, gonna be there the whole time. It's just, I don't know.
but said differently, once it's in here, for the next 10 years, it's in here also,
Yeah.
right? So that's the other trade-off. And I would say that, Tom and Laura, you can tell me, but did any of this come up from the public the last round? So certainly we didn't get it this round.
We got one statement.
We were, I will also say just we were in a bit of a different space, just with some of the education cuts and things like that last time. Like, I know, I will say, like, I voted against this last time just because of the, like, fiscal situation we're in. I would like the number to be small, but it is something I'd like to normalize. Like, I do think there's a middle ground here, but we did get some comments, but most of our discussion was honestly about the budget referendum situation. That was by far and away the most contentious thing. And I think where we're at today and where we were at then is, you know, just with a year, it's a little apples and oranges. I don't know how you characterize
I
it.
agree that it was almost dismissed quickly because of all the angst that existed around the budget overall.
Yeah. And we also had council members here on this
Yeah, we
committee
Right.
advocating for it too, which was, it created a very different dynamic.
But with that said, bringing up the budget, let's just throw a number, 2,000 per town council, that's 22 grand a year. That's a part-time para,
Yeah,
right? So again, from a resident's perspective, is the money, when the money's going to the town council versus into the budget to either support something the town needs to do, another charity, or being passed down to the Board of Ed, right?
That's why my suggestion is, I say we should put it forward as a separate question so the town can decide. Because right now, we haven't had a lot of input from the town. We had one guy come into our initial public hearing saying we should do something, and that was it. So we don't know, is the town really against this? Is the town really for this? And I think if it was its own question, I mean, that's the best way of finding out. If it fails overwhelmingly, then we know, yeah, no one wanted this. And if it passed, then, I mean, it's the only way, I think it'd be the best way of seeing really what the public thinks about it. And if they really don't want it, then it's done.
For me, it comes down to kind of reality. I mean, we're a recommending body. They're the authoritative body. They're going to decide whether this goes forward. We've heard from liaisons, both sides of the aisle, which is good, that it's balanced, that this is not going to go through. And I was an advocate for a stipend to cover expenses and stuff like that, you know, 1,500, 2,000. But, and I understand your separate question. Part of me always says we already got the answer, so.
But then I
Could
guess,
I just interject something? 'Cause I just want to make sure you're clear on the process. So, once the council comes back and makes recommendations to this commission, and you decide whether you want to accept those or not, when the council votes on the charter revision changes, they can accept your recommendations. They can't make their own at that point. They can accept your recommendations in total or in part. So they
So
still
they can
have
still
an
strike it
ability
out.
to
You got
yes,
line item veto.
Yeah.
correct.
And
What was a
and
better
again,
way of
I,
saying that?
I was just, the way I comprehended it, you got a line item.
I just
veto.
wanted to make sure that was clear with everyone.
and again, I want to say this softly because I'm not trying to be controversial about this, but, you know, last week when we were talking about referendums, there were strong opinions that referendums don't work. You're only going to get the people voting that tend to be very anti-spend. That's when we were talking about the budget control. And so to hear tonight, well, let's put it as a separate question and let's let it go to referendum and then we'll hear the town's real vote on it. It just seems like that kind of contradicts what we were saying last week.
mind if I just?
Sure.
So my opposition to the referendum vote is at an odd time of year. It's not at the normal election time. So it's May, you know, people aren't ready for it. This referendum would be November, when everyone's coming out to vote.
Yeah.
And to me, they're two very different scenarios. One is an out of time period where people might not be expecting, especially since you know it's not regular. Obviously, this is also not regular, but if we do it now, by November, when people are coming to vote, when they expect to vote, they'll know about it, they'll be more educated on it, and I think they're just very different situations, because one is an out of time vote, not out of time, I don't know what the word for it would be, just, it's not the normal election period, you know, not the normal time you're expecting to do this sort of stuff, while November, everyone is going, you know, to have an opinion on things and are going in to vote anyway.
And I am actually all in favor of wanting to give town council members some money towards supporting local, right? The stipend to me, if I were in their shoes and I got a stipend, it would be to go to the events that I would normally pay out of my pocket.
Yeah.
Where I struggle is, we've heard from town council that this is not their focus. There are other things that we should be, right? So I know what you're saying, I don't disagree, but will it just go to town council, they strike it out, and we're just left with this anyways, if that's their current thinking? They have that right.
Yeah, but I think regardless of what they do, we should at least do what we think is best. Even if we go into it going, they're gonna strike it down whenever they hear this, we can at least go, we still think this is the best option. You guys can tell us no, but I personally believe, let the regular voter decide, you know, we choose an amount, obviously, we're not gonna put like 50,000 for council, and we'll choose something small, and we'll find out really what.
So I'll go back to what I asked before then. Is the thought of actual remuneration and actual quote paycheck or whatever, however structured, off the table? We all agree with that.
You mean like just a
A
stipend?
formal, not talking about stipend.
Oh, well, like a regular pay.
True pay.
Oh, yeah.
Police and
Yeah.
utilities. Everyone agree with that?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, go ahead.
are we gonna be able to talk to the town council about are we presenting it to them, are you presenting it to them, how does that process work? Like, can we tell
The
them?
draft report gets filed with me, which is considered filing with the council, and then it gets added to the council's agenda at a future meeting.
So, say,
No
They can
formal
decide what they
presentation
wanna
of
see.
it, unless they ask.
That is up to the council. They may decide that they would like to either have a special meeting and invite the commission to explain their draft report, or a special guest if it's a 15-minute or less presentation.
But that's up to them.
But that is up to the council. Or leadership, I should
Right,
say.
leadership.
Sorry, I should
Has,
have misspoke.
I guess, have the council said anything on what they want to do, or that's
No,
still?
no.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Just a question, understanding like, I mean, I would like to be able to say, hey, here's a stipend, like, you have the support of this committee, like, go decide. That would make me feel good, but if I were on town council, I might be like, come on, guys, really, you're putting this on my table to pay myself, right? I would feel weird about that.
Yeah, and that's a legitimate thing.
So like, I would feel crappy about that, but I would imagine that if I'm on town council right now, this doesn't go into effect until the next town council is elected?
Well, I
Is there a
think
way
that's-
we can
I think
say?
that would be up to us, right, to
Like
determine.
that's something that if there's a way for us to be able to say so that, you know, they're not
Would be
voting to give
budget-based,
themselves.
So it really depends.
Right.
I mean,
It wouldn't
like-
hit- hold on, it wouldn't even
Yeah.
hit this year's budget,
Right.
right? So it
and
wouldn't even
so-
be until the next election.
So I do want to say that they're, you know, it's not as if they're voting for themselves unless they choose to run and win again, right? And
Wait
so,
a minute. Didn't we just, I'm getting mixed up in years, didn't we just elect them in November?
yeah, but
So this would be effective for 2027?
Yeah, so they.
So they would get it for
But
1 year,
could-
right?
Could we put in language that it comes into effect on a certain date to ensure that it doesn't feel like they're paying themselves?
Okay.
that's,
Okay.
I just, you know,
Like,
it's a conversation we have when we talk about,
Like, I don't know what the next date of the next council is, but could we put in the charter that this rule takes effect, like, I don't know what the date, so I'll say like November 11, 2027. That's the year? Yeah. And then,
With the council taking.
So just this provision,
oh,
what do you mean?
just this thing about them getting paid, all the other stuff we're doing
All the other stuff is
is
part of
effective
it.
some
Pass
other
it.
time.
They're talking about
There
the
is
stipend.
one, only because of a recent lawsuit in South Windsor, that I would suggest we also
I mean, we could,
assign an effective date to, and that is the removal of constables,
Yeah.
because that should be effective at the next election cycle, not in the middle of their term.
Yeah, that's somewhere, so you can circle back.
Okay.
I'll sue.
so anyway,
So-
that would be what I would.
So off the tables remuneration, I guess we need a motion to discuss formally adding a stipend.
Motion.
You need a motion to discuss it?
Discuss or,
Well, motion to add it.
Oh,
Yeah,
well, I
so-
think we're still in discussion, aren't we, about it? Or don't?
Well, I'm trying to get a sense check to see if it even has enough support to
Yeah,
move forward.
I mean, is it time to vote?
can I input?
Of course.
I just, listening to everything people have to say, my opinion is twofold. I hear what the feedback was from the other people, and I agree that it sounds like they've spoken, that they're not interested in a stipend. And I also come back to, I asked this way back in the beginning, and I kind of remember some of it, but the money's got to come from somewhere. And that just means that something else might suffer or get slighted to pay the stipend. So I don't feel like I would support a stipend for the council members. And I'm just, you never know what can happen, unfortunately. And if, we're talking 10 years of, and then what's to say, the dollar changes all the time. So, $2,000 now in 4 years, prices are rising, that's life. They're gonna need 4,000 and then 6,000. And again, that money has to come from somewhere.
I mean, the amount would only change if the charter was
True,
reviewed
but
again.
it's still, it comes down to it's not free.
So
It has to come from somewhere. And I guess, and how does it, this, I don't remember, how would it come to be with the budget? You'd have to create a line in the budget to allocate that money? Or how would it even come about? Like where the money would come from and how it would be allocated, how would it be determined?
Well,
I guess, how does that work?
Well, it'd be determined based upon whatever you put in the charter,
Right,
and
but,
then would be 11 times whatever
right.
the number is, and I just
That would
put
be a
that.
fixed expense
Yeah.
that has to be
Yeah.
covered.
So you're just
Just
gonna
put that
create a
in there.
magical line in there that says
Well,
town council stipend?
Town council has a budget,
Okay,
and I don't think they have a stipend line in there, but we have stipend account lines in many of our cost centers. So that line's been created already, we just populate it within the council budget.
Okay.
I got a question here. I'm reading this again, and the paragraph says, "The members of which shall serve without compensation except for reimbursement of actual expenses incurred in the performance of official duties for the 2 years." How is what is reimbursable determined? Because it's just, that is very generic. So my question, because my motivation was when this all started, and I know we've gone to $80,000 a year. I'm just kidding. If anybody's watching, he never suggested that, okay? My thing was, if there's certain things they do that are official duties. I know when we travel, went down to the conference municipality, we got reimbursed for that. But that phrase in there, so say for instance, a counselor comes in and there's a function they went to and they were asked to go and to, read something, from the town,
Formally representing the town.
it's not really sent by the town, but they're invited as the guest to say, say a deputy mayor goes and he pays $45 to pay for whatever that event is, but he gives that. Is that reimbursable?
Technically, yes.
Okay, so
But
to me,
you know, as well as the person sitting next to you, that you guys don't do that.
No,
They don't do that.
No, what I'm saying is going back to the whole thing, my mind was, somebody runs for council, they get on council, and then they're invited to a lot of things. I always tell people running for office, when I was office, I had the things I had to be at. I had the things that I should be at, and then I had the negotiables, because I can't be at everything. And so to me, if they're at that middle ground where they're invited to go and, read a statement, or not even that, just go and say a few words, how important you group are to our town and stuff like that, and they pay $45 for that, my question is, and the remedy in my mind would be if they knew that they could, if it's something that they're not in a financial situation where those things, they start adding up, they could, submit for that if they were there on their official duties, so, because I saw how vague it was, so that was my question. I never asked for any reimbursement, I never would.
So going with yours, who would determine what's appropriate?
Well, what I would recommend, if you put, if council wanted to look at that, I would first say, adopt a policy. Because the reality is, these things happen outside of council, right? So what I see, because I have to sign off on everything that gets spent, is, you're a council member, you come in and you give me a reimbursement request. How am I supposed to,
Right, how do you evaluate?
yeah, I don't necessarily have authority over you as a council. I have authority over the expenditure. And now, again, not that I think this way, but others might, if I say, no, I'm not gonna reimburse you, what ground am I standing on to say, no, it's not reimbursable?
So on that note there, what you just said, I'd leave that totally alone. And I would you talk to the council and say, this came up, and do you want to create a policy that would be, cover, certain areas, or say, set a policy of what is reimbursable and what is considered an official act of a council member. It could be as simple as that your name has to be in a program. As a council member, if you've been invited and you pay $45, that's reimbursable because you're representing the town. Only, you make a policy where only one counselor would be in that status. If 7 counselors went, they'd all get a stipend. It'd be the one person, it could be the mayor, it could be the deputy mayor, it could be anybody. So in that case there, because that is so vague, leaving this the way it is, leaves it in their lap, and I'd rather be their headache than mine.
And which would mitigate the need for a stipend is.
Right, because my biggest thing was simply starting it, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just gonna say it leaves up to the individual counselor whether they choose to.
Whether they
or not.
choose, someone may say, you may get somebody who is, we have a counselor who's a very bright young man, he's a student teacher, he's in college and stuff. I don't know his financial thing, but young person like that, bright and upcoming and stuff, if he or she, whoever down the road would feel like, yeah, I want to go to this, but you know,
Need a few bucks.
and they may be working 2 jobs already, and so, so that's what I'm thinking. So that solves the problem, because
That would be great.
that's when I reread that, I'm like, it's already there. I just,
I would go for that.
My only question is, you brought up before maybe having some sort of, I forget what you said before.
Like spending account.
Spending account, could it fall into the same problems of, like, 'cause I think we brought up like,
If they're creating I think that's the purpose of creating the policy, right?
They can do whatever they want.
Like they create a policy with
Right. They
parameters.
define the parameters of what's appropriate,
Yeah.
right? But they already have a budget line, so they have a spending account of sorts. Limited dollars.
well, the council account used to have a food budget for the 5:30 meetings. I remember we had the Boston chicken, my favorite, I got here early every time to eat it. So that's in there, and then if they know they're going to the, council, municipalities down in DC,
Right.
there's that there, so those are all common. I'm talking about the multiple invites they get, and there's some things, obviously, and they can create a policy and says that, this has to be sectarian, it cannot be any religious, that, they can do all of that, but it's in their court to do it, because it's already stipulated there that something can be reimbursed.
Well, and then that policy can be updated in the future between 10 years of this.
Yeah, if they find a problem, they can draw it back, they can do all kinds of stuff.
Every 2
And I
years, whoever
appreciate
gets
that, yeah.
elected can
Right,
modify it if they feel appropriate.
I don't know, it seems like a simple solution.
It's a good compromise.
Rereading it probably helped me, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me say it this way. Any other discussion on this topic? I want to make sure everyone's heard. Okay. Is there a motion to keep this as written? A yes vote means we're not changing it at all. A no vote means we want to change it for whatever reason. Okay? Around the idea of stipends or expense-related items. So just need a motion to keep it as written.
Make a motion.
Motion second.
Second.
Show of hands to keep as written. Okay. Opposed?
no, it's just saying.
Okay.
That was 7 with 1 abstention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
This chart that we got tonight, was this?
I did not edit that. Oh, that one? It should be the same as.
Is it the same as what you
Yeah.
got last week?
Okay. If I have it right, that concludes the first run of the entire charter. Okay? So what we're left with, what Sheila passed out tonight is the revised red line, which included that legal verbiage that we looked at already,
Right?
and any other edits excluding those we discussed tonight.
All the edits except for tonight, right?
Except for that.
She mentioned that maybe having to add in something about.
Oh, right, about the,
The constable's terms
Constables.
and
what section's that?
on, it's at section, it's page 3.
Page 3.
Section
Municipal
1.
elections. General.
Yep.
So that would be effective on January, because they're sworn in, or they're sworn in right after the election, right? So that would be,
Their terms end this term, 11/16/27, their terms end.
okay, so it'd be eliminated them effective on that date.
You would have to add an extra line, I think, then, right? Because right now we've just
We just crossed it out.
crossed out constables.
I'm sorry, where are we?
Page 3.
Page 3, section 1, Tom, where we, the terms for the registrars were, and then we
Okay.
crossed out constables.
Yep,
And had voted to remove constables from our election.
yep.
Whoa.
So we'd have to probably add a line.
What was the lawsuit you said? You said South Windsor, something happened?
They had a change in their council, minority representation.
Okay,
They made it smaller like we do.
right.
Like in the at-large, by
Right.
state law, we could have 5-2, but we do 4-3.
Right.
So we made it more strict.
Oh, that one.
And they made it more strict and had received an opinion statement from the town attorney initially that it would be effective because it's a change in election at the next municipal election. Well, when one party did not get seated because of the change, because the party fought and said, no, it's effective the day after they voted on it. So there
Because
was
it
a
wasn't-
discrepancy,
because
it
it was not
wasn't
specified.
dictated when they made the change.
Right.
So there was a discrepancy there as to who was seated.
So for
and
that
it's still
section
in the
one,
courts.
we'll need to add a line that says that the elimination of constables is effective
Right.
with elections in.
Would you agree, Matt, that we should have
Yeah.
that?
Do we need to specify that it won't be on the next ballot either?
No.
That'll be a given once, if it's ratified next November.
Right, and it will be in the draft report.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So that'll be the election after this next one,
Yes.
essentially.
If this goes through this November.
Right, it would be eliminated.
27th would be, the council will stay in office until the following, just November.
November of
We're not
27.
removing those that were duly elected.
Right, because they'll still be up for election this coming
It just won't,
election.
yeah, there won't be any,
They'll just have a finite term of 1 year.
right, and there'll just be, it won't even be on the ballot.
No, there would be no term.
No, constables don't get elected this year.
Oh, that's,
No.
that's right.
Yeah, they would just have their twilight days of the last year, so.
Right. So they would not be on the election ballot for 27
Right.
in that scenario. Motion to add that sentence clarifying the timeline.
I was making sure Sheila had language written down all right.
Right.
Just to make sure we hear
The
it.
elimination of the office of constable.
Mm-hmm.
Is effective, I'm not sure how to word this, as of the November 27 municipal election.
Let's get that wordsmith maybe.
Yeah, it's a.
That one needs to be
Yeah,
worded a little
let's,
better.
let's talk with the town attorney's
We'll
office.
talk about
Yeah,
that.
just get the right term, yeah.
Okay,
But I'm thinking that's actually gonna have to be its own paragraph.
right, that's right,
Yeah.
down below.
So
yeah.
should we vote in favor of approving what the town attorney says, or do we want to hold off just to make sure we?
We'll hold off on that one until next week, just so we see the words.
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, because you're gonna need to see the red line as
Right.
with today's
Right.
changes.
So just a couple administrative things and we can figure out what we're going to do next here. We have the red line, so what I would like to do for next week's meeting, and not that we're closing this one, but for the 28th, be prepared to just discuss any modifications of the existing red line, make sure they're good with the way we intended them, the way Sheila was able to update them, so that next week we can close out all the red lines as final, as far as what we're proposing to.
May I add
Of
something?
course.
And if everyone could, if you have an opportunity during the week, reread your charter to make sure, just like the first commission, we missed a couple of the newspaper notices here and there. Just reread it and make sure there's nothing that contradictory, that we missed.
Do you think, or when do you think you, barring the attorney response on that one paragraph, when do you think you get the red lines from today to us?
It really just is up to the attorney on that last line, but the other red lines, I'm sure I could get them to you tomorrow.
Awesome.
It's not,
Okay.
there's not much.
Okay, so we'll use that as our official copy, and then whatever the attorney provides, we can just review that separately next week.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Sheila, that's really helpful.
Is there any issue with if the attorney gives you something before then that you send it to us?
And as long as we don't discuss it, that's fine.
Don't reply all.
Right,
So if
do
you're-
not reply all.
If you get a response before Friday,
So everyone can review.
yeah, send a revised red line with that, so
That would
that'll,
be great, because then I could bring the completed
right.
to the meeting.
Okay. Does that work for everyone?
Yeah, that'd be great.
And then we'll work off of that next week. Again, review, make sure the red lines, make sure there's nothing we didn't capture or adjust. Because if we can get that done, what I would also like to do as part of that review is think about, one, the number of buckets we need from a recommendation for the referendum. By buckets, I mean voting lines, right? So there's as I said before, there's the simple edits. To me, those should go in the easy to pass item number
Some
one,
of
if
the
you
smaller
will.
things you may want to combine, and I'm just saying that as a town clerk now,
Mm-hmm.
because we also anticipate 4 referendum questions.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to pull them out separately per school?
No, that should be one.
One? Okay,
Yes,
all right, then we don't have to worry.
Okay, you're worried about too many referendum
I was
items.
worried about
Okay.
having running.
Yeah, I'll be
runaway
honest with
ballot.
you, when you said 4 referendums, I mean, I'll be honest with you, the rule of thumb, we always advise no more than 2.
Yeah, no, I wasn't sure because of the
One's
way
gonna
they
die.
pass them
Yeah, no,
separately.
that's just because of the applications.
Okay, all right.
I mean, my thought is, I don't think anything in here is really controversial, especially if we're not doing stipend. I think it should always be one. Unless there's something in here that I'm missing that people
Well,
hate.
So I think, the first, you have at least 3 questions, First one is, all the changes just need to be made because it brings it up to date, right? That's one. I think budgetary changes, so, like the question on the referendum for the projects, that should be in, not necessarily its own, but in one away from the first one. And then, there was something else that I thought was,
The budget, the capital spending, I don't know.
Right, I mean, that's a good point, right? The
Yeah.
capital expenditure section,
Yeah.
that's gonna be a question mark.
Yeah.
We don't know how
Yeah.
the residents will hear that. And the explanatory text, do we write that? Who writes that to describe what's being done?
So generally, the explanatory text for charter revision goes hand in hand. It's obviously approved by the town attorney. It goes hand in hand with your draft report. So it's pretty much.
Okay. So we'll move on.
I wasn't sure how you were wanting to proceed with that draft report. So I did bring, it is on our website. The 2024 charter revision is still up there under the town clerk's page. There's a whole page for it. There's a page for our current one too. This is, so this had, the attachment was obviously the red line. I didn't print that out. But this is how the draft was. It just will give you an idea of
Yep.
how you want it formatted.
This is what you know this.
This was the last
Yeah.
one. Does not mean you have to do it in that format.
Yep.
And then all the red lines were attached to it, but that is very similar. The explanatory text is also, from last time, is also on there, so you can see, if you didn't look at your copy that was mailed to you, you can see what the residents.
And some of that, a lot of that could be just edited because a lot of the red lines that were done with the group last time have been reincorporated.
Right, and with that explanatory text is going to depend on how you all, or how the council approves those ballot questions, because they have to, the explanatory text has to explain that one question, and then, okay, question 2, you know what I mean? You've got to, so that will change quite a bit depending on how the council approves the questions.
If you're lucky.
well, it's, and I just, I don't know how because there's just 2 other things that are just kind of different than the rest. So section 4 on the vacancies, is totally rewritten. That may be one that would actually maybe be paired with the removed from office piece, because they're kind of,
Very, yep.
so I mean, those were kind of the 3 that I think kind of stand out that, you may want to split out because you don't know how people are going to react to them.
Yeah, so for next week, come with your thoughts of, again, the first bucket to me is easiest. It's just it's the cleanup stuff, right? That should be not a big deal. It's how do we want to break out some of the other things that we've done in here?
But at the end of the day, this still is a recommendation to the council, right? They
Yes.
can- I mean, if they want to, they can split it across 50 different
Or
referendums.
just throw it all in one if they really want, right? But again,
Or tell us
we'll
we're
figure
wrong,
that out
you
next
know?
time when we're together, and we may decide it only needs 2, right? But again, if we review the red lines and start kind of grouping them into low, medium, high in terms of seriousness from a resident's perspective, that'll give us a good indication, right? Also, think about, for some of these changes that we've proposed or reproposed, what do we need to do to make sure the residents understand what we're trying to accomplish, given that they aren't here hearing our discussion and, right? Because I think that goes into that explanatory text. We want them to understand our thought process. It's not just trying to give Matt all this power, as an
I
example.
mean, that's something we'll discuss the next meeting, how we want that language to be.
We can start that, yeah, because that'll, I think, be a week or two effort to get that final text out.
Correct, but I think what we will have to discuss possibly at the next one, maybe certainly by the following meeting, is we need to set a date that we think we're going to hold a public hearing.
Yep.
Because that, obviously, I have to advertise that.
Is the public hearing before or after the town
The
council?
public hearing, the commission has to hold a public hearing when the draft report is completed, but before they submit it to the council.
Before we get to council. Okay.
Because then we
And
can
then-
make any final,
And then after, when the council receives it, within, I think it's 45 days off the top of my head, I have the schedule. I think I gave you all the schedule the first meeting. The council has to hold another public hearing. That's the council's public hearing.
Okay. Other thoughts? Okay, so.
honestly, I don't know how Tom feels, but I just want to say thank you to everybody. This process has been like delightfully gracious and like,
Yeah.
it was very interesting
Well,
last
we're
time.
not done yet. The
No,
fight's
no,
still happening. We still have a few weeks left.
No, but still, like, you don't
I'm gonna ruin your
understand.
whole
Like-
night. By the way, I watched all of last year's meetings, when I got assigned this, I watched them all.
I don't know, I feel really good about this, so I just want to say, like, thank you.
100%.
It's not what I was expecting either.
But this has been lovely, and I also, even though I didn't agree with everything that eventually ended up in the charter that went to the public, in fact, probably not a good amount of the changes, but neither here nor there, like, I just really want to say thank you for considering our red lines too, like, it makes it feel a lot better, so, like, it's very much appreciated. I also know, at least personally, Tom is way calmer than I am, but I was like reliving all my feelings from last year, so thank you for tolerating that. I think this is, I think, a really good product, so appreciate it.
I think we're in a good spot.
Yeah.
We got out early one night for the basketball game.
We
so-
did.
We don't have a meeting this Thursday night with the NFL draft, so I want to thank you for that too.
Not,
For this Thursday, we couldn't.
That's right.
Yeah, so the next one is the 28th. Anything else we need to discuss before we,
Motion to adjourn.
do we have a motion to adjourn?
nope.
There we go.